Thank you for joining us. This is the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee meeting. We're here in person, and we also are virtually. If anybody would like to join online, you can join via Zoom. You can ask questions. I am Maria Cabrera, City Council Member at Large, the chair of this committee. At this time, I would like the committee members first to introduce themselves.
Councilwoman Brigida Fields, 5th District.
Councilman Vincent White, First District.
Councilwoman Yolanda McCoy, 6th District.
Councilwoman Shanae Darby, 2nd District.
And I do believe that another committee member, Councilmember Field, is online via
Yes,
Zoom.
present.
Thank you very much. Are there any other, and Councilmember Bracy has also joined us via Zoom. Are there any other council members on Zoom that I need to recognize? Okay, not hearing any. We're going to start with the first agenda item, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 48 of the City Code to require the Department of Land Use and Planning to notify City Council of building and demolition permits and waterfront development projects. The sponsor is Councilmember Darby, and you may proceed to speak on your legislation.
Yeah, so this piece of legislation, it's really just involving city council in the process of when permits are submitted. So the same way that we are involved in the process with zoning, I get a whole bunch of letters about people's intention to rezone, and we get notified when that's happening in our district. So it's a similar process with the permit. There is one amendment I am making. I don't know if Marshall is there. Does he emailed it, the amendment, or no, he didn't. So, but yeah, so this just allows for notification to city council. So really, that's it. This allows us to be a part of the process and not after the process. So of course, the administration, anytime I have a piece of legislation, wants to write memos, of course. And in the memo, they mentioned that there's a public platform called open.gov, right, where you can go and look at projects currently happening. That's nice and all for the public to do, but as city council people, as the legislative branch, we should be notified as the development is happening, as the conversations are happening. We should be a part of that in some way. Other city councils in other cities, they are a part of the process. There's no way you can build in some other cities without the city council being aware of it before it becomes an actual project. So open.gov does not allow you to see the permits. They don't allow us to be a part of the process and to know ahead of time. Like we're notified when there's a house before the zoning meeting takes place. So that's all I have.
That's it. At this point, any questions from city council members?
Yes,
Councilman White?
Madam Chair, may I,
Yes.
just for clarity, talk to the sponsor? Would this notification be after the permits have been ordered or authorized, or is this prior to said permits?
This is when the application is submitted. So once the application is submitted and someone has intentions on building, then we are notified, and it says, hey, we know that they have intentions on building or getting a permit for whatever future thing is.
Madam Chair, may I follow up with the
You may
councilwoman?
continue.
So, at the state level, that was a similar process of notifying state legislators about projects within their particular district. We found that it can create a fair housing issue in terms of those legislators being involved in this process to the extent that their support or non-support could be seen as problematic and potentially violate the fair housing rights of the persons who would be using this particular redevelopment. I would think that that same risk would translate to the city. In other words, if there was a project or projects not of my liking are not of my understanding, then I could possibly have the potential to torpedo that initiative. And I wondered, what's your thoughts regarding that? Because we all live in, we want to be responsive,
Right.
but not being obstructive.
Well, this isn't a new process for city council. So we currently, before someone goes to the zoning board, we get a notification, and we know that there's a zoning board request. I don't know if you get the emails and the letters too.
Right.
And when that is the case, we're able to petition and say, we don't want a rezoning for a liquor store to be there, or we're able to support. I think that's part of a democracy. I think that allows room for people to have conversations about stuff before it happens. So it's not like it's a new process for city council. We have been doing this with the zoning, where we're able to then advocate or not, or say, but we don't stop the application from happening in the zoning board, but we do have a say, and we know that it's happening. So it's not like if we know that the permit is being submitted, we can stop the project. But of course, we can have a voice on if we support it or not, which I don't think anything is wrong with having an opinion or voice about if you support a project or not. Even if I might not agree with you if you support the project or not, that's your opinion. You should have it. It's the democracy, and we should be aware and a part of the process when we're talking about development. The point that we don't know and we have to go to a public format, open.gov, like we're just regular public people, is problematic that we're not even a part of that process at all in regards to just letting us know. So that's that.
Another question, Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, you may proceed.
How would your legislation protect the fair housing rights, the protected classes in Delaware?
Well, I guess that's a conversation we can have. It's been on the agenda, and I haven't heard anything about that before.
Well, again, Madam Chair, and I'll wrap it up. I think I understand the overall intent, and you are absolutely correct, Councilwoman Darby. We do get notifications of zoning changes. I find all of that very uncomfortable for me as a fair housing practitioner to make certain that I do not interject myself into something without the full consciousness of those actions. And I think we have several, I just not quite certain how this would flow out. And my concern is that I wouldn't want to violate anybody's fair housing choices. And when you mention liquor stores, and that's retail, I'm not, there's certain residential aspect of city living that we're going to find more attractive, and I believe that just would like to make certain that there are safeguards against someone saying not in my community, and they may not do it as a council person, but as an instrument of their neighbors or whatever the case may be, or the neighborhood. That's my concern. We could talk off record or whatever your pleasure is, but that's my concern, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for
Yes, we
that
can-
healthy discussion. Okay.
Oh, no, I would say, yes, we can discuss off record about it, because this legislation has been on the agenda, and none of those things have been brought up to me at all.
I'm just a little slow. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I've
I'm
been-
just saying,
been
it's
a little
been
busy.
there, and you have not reached out.
Your
text-
comments are well
All right.
taken.
Either way,
Okay.
regardless of what it's on the agenda or not, this is where we discuss the issues. Instead of on city council, this is where we hash it out, and that's where changes can be made. So that way it's very public and we have these discussions. So I'm glad that was brought up. Councilmember Field, you have your hand up. Please proceed.
Yes, my question, the sponsor, is what exactly is the problem that this is addressing? There is a process. What projects were happening that people didn't know about? And why is this targeting one district, the waterfront? I mean, just basically, what is the problem? Who is complaining about this? And can you please give some specifics?
Yeah, so it doesn't just target the waterfront. So I'm going to read it for you. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 48 of the City Code to require the Department of Land Use and Planning to notify City Council of building and demolition permits and waterfront development projects.
So what is the problem that this is addressing?
So
Where is this a problem?
Yeah, so, and I was addressing one of your questions. I didn't know if you read the title. But the other problem is, that we're not, city council isn't a part of the process of knowing when a development is happening. We don't know until we see a building going up, or until someone else in the community makes us aware, or if you happen to have, and the administration likes you, they might tell you. So those are like the only ways to really know if development is happening in your community. It's either through just word of mouth, talking to people, but when people come to me as a council person, they're like, do you know this development piece is happening? I can't really give them too much information because I'm not a part of the process. However, if someone comes to me about the zoning, I'm like, yeah, I got that letter. I have an opinion. These are my thoughts about it. I'm able, as a city council person, to have an opinion, to show what my support is of a zoning application that has been submitted or not. With this process that we have with permits, we don't. So it allows city council, one, to be involved. Other major city councils are involved in this process of knowing when development is coming down the line, not when after it's finished, and we have to look on a public platform like open.gov to look at already established projects. So it's addressing that issue that I have spoke of in my introduction and when I was talking to Councilmember White.
Thank you. Is there any other Councilman Field? Did you want to follow up?
Yes, I'm going to be voting against this. I don't see that there is an issue that merits these additional steps. In my district, I can only speak for my district, but whenever, I just don't see a problem that needs to be addressed by this. There is a process. Any new building, and there aren't that many, but people have come to me as the council person every single time and told me about it. And I just think we need to be focused on specific things that add tangible value to the city and the development process, and I don't see this as one of them.
Thank you, Councilmember Field. Councilmember Fields?
Yes, this is just a comment. It's a two-part. So I know for zoning, it is really the community that the zoning board talks to, and they take their concerns under consideration. The council person is just there to hear and be a part of that process. But we as council, we have no say on whether the zoning board is going to approve any of that. It's the community that has to write letters, whether it's a civic association, a business, or so forth. Secondly, just like Councilman Field spoke, I have no issues with getting in contact with the developers. I must say I have gotten a reputation that in order for you to develop within the 5th District, you must email me, call me, and we must have a meeting. That way we can engage the community, we can engage the administration, and we can engage everyone around us to make sure that we are not just developing, but we are becoming community partners. So I have not ran into that issue. I think it's more so of just having a conversation with those particular departments. If you have the ability to have a conversation with them, I think that is key when it comes to developing a relationship with these developers, whether it's demolition or developing. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that President Council is available on Zoom, and he is marked as being present. Councilmember Tarpey?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. So if you read the code, section 4867, meetings, procedures, and records, city council is one of the notifications or a statement that the applicant has to notify. So they have to do the community and city council as clearly stated in the code. So the first thing was not correct. So with this piece of legislation, just like Councilmember Field on the Zoom said, he learns from the community. His community comes to him and tells him that development is happening. As a council person, you should know before the community knows. and that's the point of the legislation, so he helped to support it. And what I'm saying is that we need to know when the development, before it becomes a project, before it becomes something that is happening, that city council is simply notified about. This does not allow us to have a say, like, I don't know where that came from. It just allows us to be notified, just like in the section, in a code, section 48-67, that it allows for a statement. A statement has to be sent to the applicant of notification, attempting good faith to notify all owners of the property that adjoins the applicant's property, as well as the affected city council representative. So it's in the code. And I can make sure that you have that so that you know going forward. But those are the process for this legislation is simply notifying city council. Other city councils across the country are involved in this process, so that we are not waiting for our community members to come and tell us when we should know these things as representatives, to let our community become aware of what's coming down the pipe. Now, the fair housing thing, that's something I have not thought about because this legislation's been on the agenda and that has not been brought to me in any type way about that. So I can't answer to something that hasn't been brought to me about fair housing things. So with that, I'm willing to have a conversation with Councilmember White to figure out what that looks like, because that has not been brought to my attention at all for me to even answer a question about that.
Thank you, Councilmember Darby. Councilmember Fields?
Yes, I just want to make a very clear, I want to just clear something up. When I said that the council person doesn't have a say, I said that when it came to zoning, we are allowed to be on the meetings, but they do not make their decisions based off of what the council people say. It is basically based off the rendering, the information that was provided, and if the community approves or does not approve. Whether it's in this piece of legislation or not, I wanted to address the zoning part. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Field?
Yes, I just want to respond to, just so, the comment was made that we are waiting for the community to tell us about projects. That's not what I said, and that's not what I mean. All I can speak for is in the 8th District, whenever there's been somebody that wants to build something, they have reached out every time, whether they are required to, because they're not required to unless they need a variance. But every single time someone has wanted to build something significant, and sometimes no variances are required, but they have reached out. And to me, informally as the city council person, or formally, and also to the neighborhood associations. And so the notion that council members are waiting for the community to tell them is not what I said, and it's not what is happening as far as I can see across most city council districts. And again, I just don't see, we need to focus our efforts on things that need fixing, and I don't see this as a problem.
Thank you, Councilmember Field. My question, I guess, is going to be to the administration, because we do understand that anytime that there's a change that is made, that means that in order to react to these changes, things have to happen in terms of who now has to determine what goes where. You know, is that a person? Is that something automatically that the program, the software can be programmed to just automatically send that notification out that if a permit for these things come in, the notification should go to these people, being us, the council members, and maybe anyone else who gets it. So what would it entail to enact something like this?
So let me just say this and start from the beginning, because Councilwoman Darby mentioned in the beginning that the administration sent out a communication about the information being on OpenGov. I'm very surprised that the stance that she's taking, given that this process is more liberal than the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Because what happens is that as soon as someone comes in to process a permit or application, we're taking that information immediately and putting it on OpenGov on a weekly basis. Now, the information you're getting from about the Zoning Board of Adjustment, that happens over a span, a period of time, and then there's a notice sent out to council members about all the different projects. But this is way more notification to council and the public, because we're updating that portal once a week. So we don't know ahead of time we don't have a crystal ball and knows what projects are going to happen. We're noticed when they come in and filled out the application and the permit. That's when we know, and that's when we share it with the public and with council. Now, what can happen, if you guys are interested in a certain project, we can say, okay, we'll pull that permit. It'll be listed, we'll pull the permit, and you'll see the whole application. But in this particular ordinance, what she's asking is that we print out all of the applications, which will be very tedious. And so what I'm saying is that you have the OpenGov portal. You can look at all the applications, all the permits that have been submitted, and this is very interactive. It's more liberal, like I said, than the ZBA notices. So,
So basically, it would entail a staff person or an additional person doing this, or how would it be flagged?
as it is written, it would take more staff to take their time and have to actually print out every single permit and application. But the way that it's uploaded in OpenGov, you can access that information right away. And if you need more detail about a project, then that's when we can go in and print out whatever you need.
Thank you. Councilmember White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief. For clarity, is the information contained in OpenGov on a district basis? How is it aggregated?
It's just as the permits and the applications come in. That's how it's just, based on what's being applied for.
So is that, again, I'm going to tell you, the least I know, the better for fair housing I am. But for my colleagues' comments, is there methodology in this OpenGov system to do this on a district basis?
I'll have to see if we have the ability to filter that information.
And just, Madam Chair, and as a follow-up, if it is, then is it just possible that once it's aggregated, the council person for whatever said district can get notification to go into the system?
Yeah, I mean, the system, we share the link, you just go on there anytime, like I said.
But
Yeah.
by district, so.
Yeah.
And we,
If we can do that, if we can separate it out among districts, then I'm going to go back to, my staff and find out if we can do that.
and with the ability to opt out
Yeah,
of said notifications.
okay.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry if I didn't recognize that this is the Chief of Staff, Tanya Washington, who came up to answer
Thank
the
you.
question. I don't know if you introduced yourself, but I'm just
Thank you.
thinking, just in case. I'm going to proceed with a couple questions. Well, first of all, government is known for red tape. And every time that we make a change on a council basis, because it sounds like a good idea, and I understand the spirit of inclusion and just being informed, we have to take into account that it takes man-hours, it takes equipment, it takes programming, it takes money. Every time we make a change, we have to pay for these changes, and what is the greater good and what is the outcome. As government as it is, we have to be open. There's so many processes that it's available. We can be FOIA. So if somebody wants to have information, they can get it. I mean, I do believe, I come from the school, if it ain't broke, we don't have to fix it. But if we can make things better, I'm all for that, in the spirit of that. Taking into account what Councilman White said, which is a whole other level that I wasn't even thinking of, that it could lead to prejudice when someone is applying for a permit, and having that information and what we do with it, and in stating what happened on the state level, which, as we know, we don't even have home rule, but on a state level, they saw that that could be problematic because it could give the appearance that people want to know about a project ahead of time, so that there could be some interference. Not to say that that is the spirit of this legislation, but certainly it could translate into something like that. The fact that this information is available publicly and that people can go on there and check, if they're so concerned about what's happening in those areas, then they should. Now, when I read this, it says City Council building and demolition permits and waterfront development projects. What I'm going to ask the sponsors, does this include, with this verbiage, any project going on anywhere in the city? Because obviously saying waterfront development projects adds a designation to it, which is what led us to believe that it's only hitting certain development projects. So is this for citywide demolition permits? Councilmember Darby?
Yes, it says the land use and planning to notify city council of building and demolition permits, and then we include the waterfront development project, because their process is a little bit different.
Okay, all right, so I wanted to be clear on that. Is there anyone else that has any questions or any comments they would like to make in
I'm
reference to
going
this
to wrap up,
legislation?
Madam Chair, because I think the intentions of Councilwoman, I don't have to, she can speak for herself, are well meant. I think sometimes we forget, per your conversation, we are in the customer service business. And it's this city's job, as well as ours, to be good stewards of information. Now, I understand there may be some additional efforts, but at the end of the day, we're in the customer service business, and information should flow out in a very, information should flow out with that intent. So when I hear additional this or additional that, that doesn't warm my heart. We're in the customer service business, and we as city residents and we as council should understand that and operate under that directive. So I just want to make that clear that I don't see the ask overextending on that notion, and that, but I do see, I don't want to get pushed back because, it may entail, with all due respect, a little more dollars or a little bit realignment. We're in the customer service business, so let's keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
At this point, I would like to welcome any comments or questions from members of the public. Do we have anyone in the public that would like to speak to this specific ordinance? Excuse me. We have a Lillian Nichols. Lillian, if you're with us, please proceed.
I just have one question for the author. In reading the legislation, it said minor and major projects in the districts, and I was wondering if there is any type of quantification of what classifies as a minor project, what quantifies as a major project, that the information would have to be passed on to City Council.
Thank you, Ms. Lillian. Councilmember Darby, are you able to address that?
Yeah, so there's no definition of minor or major. So the Department of Land Use and Planning can probably best answer to what that includes. But we would just be, so right in this legislation, it just said we'll provide copies of applications. In the new one that I was supposed to get to do amendment, it sends a notification. So it doesn't include sending an application, of each application to us. It includes the notification just the same way that we do for the zoning board, where we can also discriminate, or we can also support or not support things for housing projects and for commercial projects. So that argument could be said that we could do the same thing for zoning, but that process hasn't been challenged. But for this minor and major, the Department of Land Use will have to answer what they decide that based on the applications that they get.
Ms. Lillian, does that answer your question? Do you have any follow-ups?
I guess it's not so much of a follow-up as it is as a member of the public. I understand, though I applaud the intent of this piece of legislation, I would recommend that my representative not support it, as listening to Representative Fields and some other folks. If it's not broke, don't fix it. This information is available, and I would recommend that this bill not pass committee today.
Thank you, Ms. Lillian. Do we have Betty? Is there a Betty online?
She's gone.
She's gone, okay. Randy Washington? Not sure if you're here to speak on this or the next piece of legislation. Is there anyone else online that wants to speak to this?
I'm here. This is Randy Washington, but I don't have any comments for this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're for the next one. Okay. So at this point, are there any other additional comments or questions from city council members that are here, from the committee, or any council members that are online that would like to speak? And if not, the sponsor, if you have any other comments before we take it to a vote?
Yeah, so this piece of legislation is to notify city council where the Department of, oh, now they send it, okay. I do want to do one thing. Actually, I'm just gonna hold it, Marshall. I'm gonna hold it. Yes, I'm actually gonna hold the legislation. I didn't get the amendment strikeout stuff that I needed to make an amendment. But really, this legislation is about just notifying city council of being a part of the process when permits are submitted, as simply as what happens with zoning. So it would have been nothing different than that. But I'm going to hold this piece of legislation mainly due to the fair housing thing that Councilmember White mentioned that I wasn't able to answer because the question was asked to me on the floor and not beforehand. So I'm going to hold the legislation.
Thank you, Councilmember Darby. At this point, we're going to proceed to the second agenda item, which is an ordinance to approve amendments to the large-scale redevelopment project known as the Wilmington Flats. The sponsor is Councilmember Johnson. I do want to add, if there's anyone from the public who's here for the third agenda item, ordinance 22-037, that particular piece of legislation is being held and will not be in the meeting, discussed in this meeting this evening. So at this point, do I have someone, either Councilman Johnson or someone who could speak to agenda item, the ordinance to approve amendments to the large-scale redevelopment project known as the Wilmington Flats? Oh, Tim Lucas is here with the Department of Planning. Welcome. Introduce
you.
yourself and you may proceed.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Council Committee members. My name is Tim Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director for Planning with the Department of Land Use and Planning. And I'm here tonight on behalf.
Madam Chair,
Excuse me.
I'd like to excuse myself while this legislation is being discussed.
Okay. Councilman White is excused. Sorry.
No problem. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Land Use Division to present the proposed amendments to the Wilmington Flats large-scale redevelopment project as submitted by Woodlawn trustees. Next slide, please. The Wilmington Flats neighborhood, commonly known as the Flats, was constructed by the Woodlawn Company in the first 2 decades of the 20th century as a planned community of rental housing for working-class citizens. This multi-block development is approximately 10 acres in size and is generally located between Union and Ferris Streets, extending from 4th to 9th Streets. Along with other family-oriented amenities, the original development contained 290 brick row houses, which accommodated approximately 390 families. Next slide. In 2013, Woodlawn Trustees Incorporated submitted plans for a 7-phase redevelopment of the site and was reviewed by both the Department of Planning Development and City Planning Commission under the large-scale redevelopment project guidelines outlined in the City Code. The guidelines allow for a more efficient review and overall planning of large projects in comparison to conducting separate reviews of individual buildings or phases. This project was ultimately approved in December of 2013 by City Council ordinance. Since that time, several blocks of the project have been completed and are currently occupied. Next slide. In September of 2023, Woodlawn trustees submitted revised site plans with minor amendments to the site and building layout to blocks EF, G, and H. Block M, which comprises the entirety of Phase 5, has been redesigned from 6 buildings to 1 single apartment building. This can be visualized on the following slides. Next slide. As you can see on the site plan in this slide, the blocks highlighted in red are subject to the recommendations I am presenting this evening. Next slide. Blocks EF G, and H are circled here on this slide. Block M is circled top left. Next slide. The changes to the number of buildings and residential units per building are summarized in the table shown here. The changes shown result in a net gain of 10 residential units, which represents a relatively minor change to the original 450 unit proposal. Next slide. The projects and plans submitted were reviewed for conformance with the large-scale redevelopment guidelines, which included a review of all applicable zoning requirements. One of the project amendments includes the elimination of 2 parking garages originally planned for construction on blocks EF and IJ. This change represents an overall reduction of proposed parking from 480 spaces to 341 spaces. This reduction in parking was approved by the city's Zoning Board of Adjustment on October 23rd, 2023. The proposed changes to the site and building design meets all R3 zoning requirements related to massing and scale. These requirements include the floor to area ratio, building coverage ratio, and building height. Next slide. This slide shows a rendering of the single proposed building on Block M, which is Phase 5, as it would be visible from Ferris Street. As you can see, the designs are consistent with the overall style of the 2013 proposal. Next slide. On November 17th, 2023, the proposed changes being considered tonight were presented at a public meeting of the City Planning Commission. The commission concluded the following. One, that the proposed changes represented an overall reduction of the number of buildings and a minor net gain of only 10 residential units. Number 2, that the proposed amendments to the Wilmington Flats large-scale redevelopment project were in keeping with the original intent and scope of the project as approved by City Council in 2013. And 3, that the amendments also meet all requirements of Section 48-476 of the City Code. The Commission voted to approve Resolution 10-23, recommending that City Council approve the application for the Wilmington Flats large-scale redevelopment as submitted. Next slide. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start. My first question is going to be, in the original, was the apartment building included? Was it going to be the single units like they normally have, or was that something new they decided to do the apartment building?
It was a change from 6 separate buildings, which I believe were blocks of row houses, into the single apartment building. And it was based on, from what I understand, it was based on demand. I believe it's focused on senior housing. So it's really represents the only significant change to the plan since its original.
Okay, so when you say
design.
senior housing, meaning is there a certain percentage that has to be allotted for seniors, per HUD requirements, affordability? How does that work?
I'm not sure if someone from Woodlawn is present tonight to
Okay.
answer
Yes,
that
if you could
question.
please come forward. Thank you. And state your name, please.
Hi. Yes, I'm Dakota Lehman Murray. I'm with Landmark Signs and Engineering. I did the site design
Yes.
for this project. So yes, it was changed over to the senior housing, and they will be 100% senior housing for this block of units.
So for how many units will be?
50.
So both of the
56?
buildings, does it look like there was
It's
one,
one
two, three?
building. It's like a L-shaped building
Okay.
on Block M.
53.
53.
Yeah.
Mhm.
53 units.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of more senior housing as we have issues. I was actually happy with just having more housing since we have a housing shortage in Wilmington. So being that now you're telling me it's senior housing, I don't see where the parking might be as big of a deal. Not a lot of seniors own their own, have a car or use vehicles, but some do. Because I was concerned how that would impact the community, having that many apartment units, and it's already a battle for parking in that area. That's Little Italy. You have all those businesses. They're already going on the side streets and competing with the neighborhood for parking. Also, my concern with the parking is you have Woodlawn Park. There's some major improvements going on there. It's really going to be more of an attraction, not just the baseball games, and how we see more attendance coming. And again, the competitiveness for parking. Is it necessary to get rid of those additional parking spaces?
Well, it wasn't something considered by the Planning Commission simply because the Zoning Board of Adjustment had already approved that, so that law, basically the law was varied by that, the approval of that board. So at the point of City Planning Commission, that was no longer a matter of, it was beyond their purview of discussion.
Can I just ask directly, was there any studies or anything specifically done in reference to the parking?
The parking, well, all the lots of the Wilmington Flats development are creating on-site parking where none existed before.
Okay.
So overall, there's a net increase of parking to this area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering my questions.
Yep.
Councilmember McCoy, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to ask whether or not, it doesn't seem like the footprint actually hasn't changed any. You just went from creating 6 places, 6 homes or whatever, into a large apartment complex?
Yeah, I guess the layout of the site varies, and there is increasing more units because the previous 6 units were 2 stories, and this is a 3-story apartment building, so it is an increase in units, but it is restricted to seniors in this area.
Right. So now I was just looking at the size of it, but it's basically still within the same footprint. that
It's still within
initially-
the
okay.
within the block footprint.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so, yeah, I did see on here that you're basically at an additional 10 units, but you're stating that I do see the 140, 139 difference when it comes to the parking spaces. Had you taken into consideration the parking spaces along the street, like?
No,
Yeah, the-
off-site parking is not included in that parking count,
Okay.
so
that-
that is still available
Okay. All right.
to the public.
Okay. And it's all right. And so, and this is 100% for the seniors.
Yes.
Okay. That was basically it. Thank you.
Do we have any other council members that may have any questions pertaining to this legislation? Anyone from the public that would like to comment or have any questions? Okay.
Oh.
Oh, Councilmember McCoy?
I had one more question. So the, how many parking spaces actually will be for that apartment building for the seniors?
Trying to remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's,
So if it's 53 units,
yeah,
how many spaces will there be?
I want to say maybe like 20 in that area. I would have to look at the site plan.
Yeah, let's see if I can pull it up, Brock.
And to follow up with that, will the parking for the senior apartment building, will they be designated to apartments?
Oh, yeah. 11, 4, and 7. 11, 20, 22.
22?
So would there be any designation like they have in certain buildings, like people who are handicapped, they get to have first dibs?
There
or people
are,
pay for the parking?
There are 4 handicap spots on this lot, which is more than required by code for this. And there's also a large drop-off area in the front, which we have not done any building with the intent that many of the seniors will be taking some sort of public transportation drop-off service into that
So it's a
building.
total of 41 units? Is that what? No.
53
53.
units, and there's 22 parking spots.
53 units, 22. Okay. Okay, not seeing any other hands. Anyone from the public? Okay. All right, well, at this time, not seeing any other hands up, we're going to go ahead and take a vote on 0398, which is an ordinance to approve amendments.
Can you give me just 1 minute to grab Councilman White?
Okay, okay. Thank you, sorry. All right, just one moment. Councilman White wants to be part of this, and he had to step out for a minute. So, one of the things that just gives me pause is because being involved and visiting a lot of the buildings, the affordable housing buildings, which do include a majority of seniors, and of course I hear their complaints where, you know, you might have a person who's handicapped who will take that spot, will never move their car, just here and there, so that others don't have access to it. And, you know, would bring in groceries and things of that nature. Second, you know, that some seniors still are driving, they still have their vehicles, and that they don't have that parking. So would those people, because you do have those many units, they would have to use the off-street parking.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Councilman White? We're on the ordinance to approve amendments to the large-scale redevelopment project known as the Wilmington Flats. If you have any questions towards that, and Councilmember McCoy, well,
Thank you. I have one more question.
Okay.
Wanted to know whether or not Woodlawn was going to be involved in the replanning of parking and how the streets were going to look on Union Street, because they are attempting to make another go at it when it comes to the diagonal parking and things of that nature. Like, what it would look like. Is Woodlawn going to be involved, or do they have a voice with trying to figure that piece out?
I am not sure. I'm
Okay.
just the I'm just the civil
Yeah,
engineer in the project.
I just asked because, parking, like, Councilwoman Cabrera said, parking has always been an issue in that area, and so we just want to make certain that we don't initiate something that's already going to be contentious.
Yeah, I'll just say that overall, more parking is being created through this project because none existed on the site.
thank you. Councilman White?
No, Madam Chair, I'm just waiting for the call for the vote.
Okay, all right then. Well, not hearing, seeing any more hands. Any other questions? Can I get a motion to vote this ordinance out of committee?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second, the ordinance be voted out of committee. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Present.
Thank you. Motion carried. At this time, not seeing anything else on the agenda, we thank everyone for participating, those that were joining us online and those that were here. The next city council meeting, we're going to have the mayor's budget address, and that's taking place on Thursday, March 21st. That would be the following Thursday. The following city council meeting will take place Thursday, April 4th, and the next Community and Development and Urban Planning Committee meeting will take place May 9th, 2024. We thank you all for joining us, and at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It has been properly moved and second. The meeting is over. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.